Chapter 17, the real estate investment and business opportunities brokerage. We said at the beginning of the class that one of the things that we can do with our license is help others invest in real estate, but also help others invest in business opportunities, meaning buying and selling businesses. We can do this individually, meaning we can sell the business without the real estate, or we can sell the real estate and the business that operates in it. To be able to assist investors, we need to look at their considerations, the individual considerations that they make to make decisions on the type of real estate that will meet their objectives. So they look at several things, for example, their financial status, their income tax brackets, the motives of investing, and the access to credit. So to be able to assist these individuals, we need to be experts in real estate investment. We need to understand investment analysis. This is one of the things that we can do with our license. So it is important that we know what we're doing, because the public will regard us as experts in all types of real estate investment properties. There is a big reward if we achieve our objectives and the objectives of the investors, but there's also big liability involved. So if we don't know what we're doing, then we shouldn't, because if we give the wrong advice to an investor before they make a decision, we've heard of so many cases that have ended up in the courts because the investors end up suing us because they made the wrong investments and lost a lot of money based on decisions that they made based on our expertise. So we need to be very careful with investment property. Investment analysis is then the process of determining if the investment meets the investor's objectives. So this is one of the reasons they hire us. We should be able to tell them if these investment opportunities are the best opportunities for them, or if they should move on. So let's cover or review the basic terms, or let's start with an introduction to investment analysis. And to do that, we need to cover some basic terminology that is important that we know when we are analyzing real estate property or business opportunities for investment. So we're already on slide 4 of the presentation, and there is a list of terms that we're going to describe one by one to give you an idea of the things that we take into account when we are analyzing property for investment. The terms are appreciation, assets, cash flow, leverage. We're missing equity. It should have been in this slide. Equity, leverage, liquidity, basis or adjusted basis, capital gain or loss, the tax shelters, the REIT, which stands for Real Estate Investment Trust, and the risk associated with each investment that we make. So let's review the terminology first in detail. What is appreciation? It's increasing property value. So when we are analyzing property, we need to look at the market projections and the market trends to be able to advise our investors if a specific property is expected to produce an increase in value in the future. Also, we look at assets. These are the business resources. When we invest in business brokerage, we not only look at the real estate, but also all the assets that come with the business. And of course, the assets that come with the business will add value to the business. Cash flow. The cash flow is a spendable income that can be positive or negative. So if we have a business where the expenses are higher than the income, then we're gonna see negative cash flow. If we have the preferred situation where the income is greater than our expenses, then we're gonna see positive cash flow. The equity is the property's value minus the debt. So all the money that we don't owe to someone else or to another company or individual, that is considered to be our equity. Leverage is the use of other people's money, basically financing. Liquidity is the ability to sell quickly without the loss of capital. Sometimes we need to achieve a quick sale, but we don't want to lose any of the money invested at the beginning. So if we achieve that, if we can liquidify the money invested in real estate or businesses, then we have liquidity. The basis is the investor's initial cost. We call it basis or adjusted basis. And we're gonna see examples of all of these later, okay? And the capital gain and loss is associated with the basis. It's the difference between the basis and the resale price. So when we resell the property today, we achieve a specific price, and then we subtract all the expenses that we had in the property, including the initial purchase price and all the improvements that we have made to the property. The difference between the two will be our capital gain or maybe loss. The tax shelter refers to the tax advantages that we get by owning real estate. We're gonna review tax advantages in more detail in chapter 18. The REIT is the Real Estate Investment Trust. This is a group of individuals that put capital together to buy and sell real estate and to have a profit in the process. They are not a brokerage company. These are individuals that invest in real estate, mainly investors. They usually specialize in a specific type of real estate. They usually specialize in hotels, in multifamily property or single family, commercial property. So that's what the REITs are for. They invest in their own property. They let the property appreciate in time, and when they can achieve the desired return, they resell the property. And the risk is the chance of losing all or part of the investment, and the risk is associated not only with real estate or in investment in businesses. The real estate is the risk is in every single business out there. So every time that we invest money in a business, we have the risk of losing all or part of our investment. So let's look at equity that we just described, because sometimes I like to go through these simple exercises, but sometimes these are questions in the test. So sometimes we need to calculate the equity that we have on a property. So as we said, it's the difference between the debt and the assets of the business. So a property is worth $500,000 and has an outstanding balance of $375,000, assuming that is, for example, a loan that we have on the property. So what should be my equity? We just take the value of the property, subtract the debt, and we, in this situation, we have $125,000 in equity. Problem 2, leverage. We mentioned that leverage is the use of other people's money. It's financing. So investors will leverage their purchases. You don't see investors buying properties cash all the time. The majority of the investors will consider some type of financing. Why? Because when you consider financing, that increases the return on investment. So for example, to see the difference between an investment in cash or an investment with financing, and to understand how the return is increased by leveraging the purchase, we need to look at this problem. So, for example, consider that a property has a cost of half $500,000, and it produces a net operating income of $50,000 per year. What is the return if it purchased for cash? So applying our total part and rate formula, we just have to take the net operating income and divide it by the value of the property to get a 10% return on investment, which looks really good, right? But let's look at the situation when an investor decides to leverage the purchase. So the question is, what is the return of the investor if the investor decides to leverage the purchase by borrowing $775,000 at a 5% annual interest? The total interest on a loan of $375,000 at a 5% annual interest should be $18,750 that we have to pay in interest. And then we will need to subtract that amount of money from my actual net operating income. So in this example, we're saying that the investor decided to make a down payment of $125,000. So instead of investing the full $500,000 in cash, the investor is just making a cash investment of $125,000. So let's do the math. $50,000 of net operating income minus the interest amount that we have to pay to the lender every year. That should leave us with an income after the mortgage payment of $31,250. So if we take that income and we divide it by our equity, our down payment, which is the actual cash investment, we get a beautiful return of 25%. So see how the return increases just by using other people's money. So this is why investors always look for financing. Problem 3. So we have a problem here on the adjusted basis and the capital gain. This could be a typical question in the test as well, so that's why I decided to include it in the chapter. An investor purchased a property for $900,000 and spent $100,000 on improvements during the ownership and took $125,000 in depreciation. Later, the investor sold the property for $1,150,000. The questions in the exam will be, what is the investor's adjusted basis? So remember, the adjusted basis is everything that we have spent, is the cost. Whatever we spent to purchase the property in the past, plus all the capital improvements that we have made along the years, minus the depreciation that we have taken out, and we're gonna cover depreciation later in chapter 18. But this is a concept that is usually associated with the cost of the properties. So the adjusted basis should be $875,000. This is the amount of money that this investor has invested in the property along the years. So what is the capital gain? The capital gain should be the amount realized on the sale today minus the adjusted basis according to the formula. So the actual capital gain of this investment is $275,000. So let's look at slide number 9 now. Let's talk about the different types of real estate investments that are out there. That should be residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, or business opportunities. So again, the investor decides in what type of real estate to invest depending on the desired return on investment, the access to credit, the motivations that the investor has, and other variables that will motivate the investor to choose a specific type of real estate investment. Residential. When we invest in residential, we buy single family properties or multi-family rentals with the purpose of finding tenants that will give us a return on our investment. Commercial. We specialize, if we're commercial investors, we're specializing in buying retail spaces, office spaces, street malls, shopping centers, that type of property in general. Industrial. We specialize in buying properties that will allow us to fulfill manufacturing and distribution, and as such, these properties are usually near transportation facilities. Agricultural properties. Some investors that foresee future growth in a specific area buy large tracts of land, agricultural land, that then in the future they will convert to either residential developments or commercial developments. And another type of investment that some investors prefer is the investment in business opportunities. We said that this is one of the things that we can do with our license to help investors buy businesses. When the investor buy businesses, they are not only interested in the real estate but also in the business, its assets, and the goodwill. And we're gonna describe all of these concepts later in the chapter. Slide 10. The real estate investments. When we invest in real estate, we have advantages and disadvantages, just like when we invest in any other type of business in the world. Advantages: the rate of return, the tax advantages. When you are a real estate owner, you will see a few deductions that you can make, that you can itemize in your tax returns. You will also be able to pay less taxes on your primary residence, for example. You will be able to get a break on up to $250,000 of your capital gain if you resell your primary residence. Those are just examples of there's so many tax advantages that we get. The hedge against inflation is because we usually see a higher return of investment every year than the rate of inflation. So that's why we say it's a hedge against inflation. The leverage, we already discussed that one, is using other people's money. And when we invest in real estate, we see equity build up if the property appreciates in time. What are the disadvantages of real estate investments? Illiquidity. The real estate has poor liquidity. It's not like, just designing t-shirts with a beautiful logo and selling them online and being out of stock in 2 weeks. In real estate, it's different. It takes a long time from the time that we purchase the property until the time that we can actually resell it. And even when the property is already in the market, it may take a few months to be able to resell the property. The market is local in nature. So we said that the forces of the market affect the price of the property. So that's seen as a possible disadvantage. It is not possible to take my business somewhere else, okay? In a second. Just like when I have a business, let's say a restaurant, I can open a restaurant in any city in the United States, for example. But the property can be, the real estate property can be only in one single location. The need for expert help. Everything in real estate is very expensive. The fees that we pay to the attorneys, what we pay to the CPA, what we pay to the brokers and realtors. So that is seen as a disadvantage of investment in real estate. And the need for active management. If we are absentee owners, we need to pay for someone that can take care of the maintenance, collect rents, do evictions, find tenants, manage the relationship with the tenants. So that is also, apart from being a need, is also expensive. And of course, all real estate investments have some type of risk that now we're going to define in the next slide. The risk associated with the business conditions. We have a business risk, and the business risk is the one that tries to identify if the income will be sufficient to pay, if the income of the business will be sufficient to pay for the expenses of the business. The financial risk, the risk of defaulting on the borrowed funds, that's a big concern in all real estate investments. The purchasing power risk is the inflation risk. When you invest in real estate, you don't have the same purchasing power that you have when you are a restaurant owner. If you're a restaurant owner and the cost of the food increased, all you have to do is take your menu, cross out the prices in the menu, and the next day your customers will be paying a higher price. It is not the same in real estate. We have something that we call market value that we reviewed in chapter 16. We have market value for rents, we have market value for sales, and so it is not as easy as just changing the prices in the menu. So our purchasing power can be reduced in time. The risks that affect the return. Liquidity risk it's the risk that looks at the fact that the sale will not be possible and a big reduction will be necessary to achieve a quick sale. So that is liquidity risk, that you have to sell at a lower price just because of the fact that you need to sell quickly. And the safety risk is the risk that we have to lose the capital that we have invested. Market risk will be associated with this. So you may be at risk of losing the capital invested if the market value of the market where my property is located decreased. And the risk of default is the risk that the investment won't produce enough income to sustain itself.